of this curriculum.
Okay. Well, just to preface, like, none of us are using it because I have little kids, and Gabri's not in residency, and Nelson is also not currently using it. So this is not hypothetically, but it provides a framework for the curriculum. It kind of outlines things that can be used during class session. It encourages students to think more deeply and unpack ideas about culture. Those are the strengths. Weaknesses, I wrote
Oh,
can you guys hear her? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just the strengths?
Or no, 2 from each, so she started with the strength here. Do you have one?
No.
As a weakness, I wrote that it's not geared towards elementary students, because I have first grade and third grade, and I have some students that are just still learning how to write, so it's not something that I can implement easily. Do you guys have another one?
Find time to do it, in the class period, because like, I know for most Change the World classes it's about 45 minutes. They say an hour, but it's really like 45 minutes, so also finding time in your curriculum, and then also being able to get like a full on, let's have journal writing at the last 10 minutes when they're like, turn the curves down right now, blah, 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 it is 5:45, get your work downstairs. So I mean like, it makes it kind of.
Okay, so it's fine. What about opportunity? I said it provides topics for classroom discussions and activities, and also incorporating writing into a visual arts class, which is always a good thing.
I think it also will create more of a visual medium too, It's like you can be kind of creative with your writing and stuff as an artist. So it's like if you want to turn like your journal writings into that kind of blog type of situation, you can have like your artwork plus your writing framework and stuff. Okay. Well, challenges. Two quick challenges. So, I mean, it just depends. One, it depends on your residency. So, it's like one of the challenges is also like recruitment. Like if you're spending the first month trying to recruit more students to come to your program, then you kind of lose a little bit of the time that you would use for creating. Because, like, then if you're also recruiting kids into your class, you want to keep them there too. You know what I'm saying? Because, like, it's totally their choice. They can go play basketball, soccer, any other thing over the rainbow, and then they have to choose your class to actually stay in. So getting them to stay to do the journals is like one of the biggest challenges.
And also, like, I guess it's difficult to tailor something like that to students who are younger and they haven't really developed writing skills yet.
Like it's like after school, they're like, oh, we got to write, they think of paper and forms, and you're like, no, won't do that.
Thank you guys. Let's move over to this group. And since there are 2 of you who really, Susan and Miguel, who have been using it, when you're talking, if you can talk about the activities or implementation as well.
Oh, what box do you want us in?
Visual strength.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay. For strengths, I love that it is in one place where all of their questions and learning and all of that can be kept through the whole thing. It's like a place that they can refer to too, like if I have a question, or she's using that word I don't remember, like that's all right there.
Also for strengths, I said that I enjoyed how it helps them unpack their sort of self-identity in terms of their personality, their goals, their personality, and sort of interpersonal communication, and the classroom contract, and then also the identity map. They seem to like it a lot as well. But sort of unpacking the different pieces of who they are. Because what I'll do a better job next time, but I'm always trying to think of how can I do another exercise and apply it to what's happening with us and bring a sense of group awareness. And we spent a lot of time on working on the rules, and now almost every new exercise we do, I somehow use that to reminded of this one Google and that one. We were trying to always sort of connect things, but they seem to, and I think they enjoyed it more, and they have a much better sense of the program when they can see how these day-to-day things fit in a bigger picture. And also, I think that person, I can see now how they're learning to be a little more forgiving and a little more nuanced in how they interact with each other when we work together as a group. It's been tough. So I think that the identity map and then the classroom contract have been very helpful in that.
That sounds like an opportunity too, like you did start.
Yeah, so put it down on using it, trying to integrate it even more within the platform. Yeah, that's all I call shooting. Okay, so then that's opportunity number one. Check. Weaknesses.
Any other
challenges.
I was about to mention, since I haven't used it yet, that it helps to establish some sort of baseline for the students in terms of the progress. At least, I guess you can measure almost immediately by the first reading, see being engaged, where they're at in terms of how they're feeling, where their minds are at, and go into it, and see where these can work on.
Suze, was there an opportunity that you identified?
Well, right now, yeah, I don't want to implement it yet. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Okay. So, we're working on still life self-portraits. And just in what Angela was saying, like, unpacking the different pieces of who they are, like, that's exactly what a still life self-portrait is. Like, all these little objects that you're arranging represent who you are. So, like, maybe they can be like, okay, look back at your identity map. What is an object that represents, like, one of these parts or three of these parts, right? Because it's not just one little. So I think I will use that when we look at they just did their first photo shoot last week, and most of them forgot to bring objects, so it was really good. But I think we'll look at those and then look at this and be like, okay, so when we reshoot, what are you going to bring in, and how does it, so, because also they're like, what does this have to do with anything? And I need to be drawing those lines, but that was a real obvious one.
What about weaknesses? What are two weaknesses that you're going to identify?
Well, one thing that we talked about was with the I am form in particular. I think that we would have to sort of, and we have to cater to the group that we have. So after the first few sessions, you have a better sense of what kind of group we have. But the I am form in particular is the second paragraph where it comes to like imagination and some of that stuff. We're gonna have to sort of try to find ways to simplify and some of the things that are a little bit more, what's the word that I'm looking for? Like it's not age appropriate. Some of it just
The stems aren't age
Yeah,
appropriate?
sometimes it's just the language, because you had some experience where people were like,
Yeah,
what does
they
this mean?
were
What does
like-
that mean? I was like, oh, my kids asked me the same thing. And I was like, oh, I
They didn't
forgot
get
you're
it.
younger than me, so I have to explain this in a more simpler way.
Okay.
And,
So it's more accessible.
yeah, more accessible. It just needs to be more
Yes.
accessible, and again, it will depend on the group that you have and the grade, the maturity or whatever. But it just, some of it just needs to be toned down, made a little bit more simple and more accessible. Very much. But I loved it, and I was excited to instill it. But I just realized there are a lot of questions about some of the words and what does this mean, and how does this, what is it supposed to do here?
I feel like they struggle with some of these exercises more than I would expect in ways that surprise me, and then I don't know how to, I'm just like, why do you even have questions? Like, it's just to fill out it's not that hard, right? And then I'm like, I don't even know what to tell them, because what? Like, just put a thing in the line, it's not that hard. But some of the,
It's like the big idea.
Yeah.
some of the instructions are just not they need them to be really simple and clear, because these are little kids. They're smart, but they're still little. Write your reflection. They don't even know what that. That's too. That's not clear enough for them. So some of those things I found this is not a hard thing, but the instructions are not clear enough for really young people.
So
what you're kind of saying is that as an instructor, we kind of have to be the fill in the blanks for like those things
Yeah.
when explaining.
But I would also love it if, like, since there is a place for instructions at the top, if those were clear enough for my really independent students to just read it and start going. And then the ones that need more help are fine, but it's like none of them know what that means. And I feel like it doesn't need to be like that.
That's definitely a challenge as well. Is there another challenge that you guys talked about?
Well, we didn't talk about this one, but for this book, because they didn't use this book, but for this book, I was really confused in terms of what was changing world and what was high school to success. And so I get things sometimes like, okay, make sure it just was not clear. And what I did, I tried to go like page back because like, this must be in order of importance, or there's got to be some kind of a logic. But it was just really sort of like, when I see this now, I was like, oh, all that stuff is also changing worlds, and I had no idea. I was like, I think I'm just doing high school pathway to success stuff first, and then at the end is the stuff with the changing world. So I was really like, I'll get there. I've still got another month of programming to do. I'll get there. But I thought I was just doing high school pathways. But now it's like, oh, okay, it's sort of a little bit of both. So I was a little bit unclear about that, but I was like, as long as I do changing worlds and pathway, to success within the given a lot of program time, I'll be fine. But it was just, for me, I was just like, I guess what possible high school success was like the priority right now, and then now in the second half of the program, we're gonna get deeper into, but it's integrated.
It is integrated, and that was deliberate. We just never had enough time to roll out. It's clear training.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So I'm just going to pull out one of the challenges that was mentioned and open it up for a very quick kind of brainstorming on how it is that you've either addressed that challenge or any ideas that you have. And we're just going to take a couple minutes for this and then move on. One of the challenges that I heard was from Elgin when you were talking about just the writing piece in general. And so what I understood was that your students aren't or haven't been responding to writing. They don't want to write. Is there a particular activity that was more difficult than the rest of them?
Or that you
Or
anticipate will be
more
more
difficult,
difficult.
Will be
The rest
more
of it.
difficult. Can you go back to me on that one? You think?
Well, that's what we're going to pull from. So,
Sure.
would it be like looking at like an IM poem, which is to be more of like an interactive activity versus one of the like reflection pages where you're asking them to reflect?
So I would say probably like how you said on the IM poem. Like sometimes students are not going to want to go way too in depth unless you make them. You know what I mean? So it's like for example, one of the questions on here is, I will be two specific things that you dream of. I will be smart and fun next. You know what I mean? Or something like that. So unless you pull like that kind of stuff out of them and saying exactly more specifically, like filling like those blanks, like they will be really lazy towards it. You know what I mean? Or just to get done. Because like, I don't know if it's just me that like has this problem in class. It's like, okay, well, let's write about this or let's draw this, and then 2 seconds later, I'm done. You know what I mean? It's like, there's no way you're done. It's like, yes, I don't know, maybe.
Okay.
You know?
So if you're experiencing that, or you have been experiencing that, what if we looked at the IM poem as a baseline, as a reference, as something to pull from to create another activity that gets to the same things but doesn't start the students off with the writing piece of it, but maybe is a follow-up to that to then help ingrain the key concepts that it is that you're going over. So looking at it maybe from that perspective, I don't know if either of you did something similar to that, or if any of you have an idea of how you might approach then that a little bit differently.
Let me just add that I believe I've seen you do it, I've seen Corin do it, where, you know, you do exactly that. You take, there's a reference, you know what the activity is, right? And you map out, you guys do whatever, I think you did it with the classroom contract. So like you did the activity, no booklet was pulled out until they finished the activity. And then you said, let's pull it out, now I want you to write down, you know, answer these things based on what we just did. We've got a list of things on the board, refer to that, and now this is your journal where you're kind of writing a reflection down about what, you know, what we just did and how we fill out this activity in the booklet, right? So you don't have, this is not, this, you know, thing doesn't have to like be out there to scare the kids or, you know, at the beginning you can, you know, find ways to ease it in or bring it in when you know, find appropriate, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was planning the program, I had all this figured out. Like, okay, today we're going to do X, Y, Z. But then I sort of ran into a problem with, well, my students at C. Hughes, I only had 6 kids, and I was like, oh, this is going to be so easy. But just getting them to sit down and be quiet for less than 5 seconds, for more than 5 seconds, is tough. And so I knew that we couldn't just jump into like, hey, let's write and let's discuss. And it was just, let's just calm down and function quietly as a group. And so it took a lot of time, but what I would do is get them to do physical activity and run around and do whatever. And then very carefully say, okay, and then if we're going to do any activities, I'd first talk about them and I'd take notes on the board or whatever the case may be, and then very carefully like, all right, now that we've done that, let's sit down, get our books, and open up. And then I think because they'd already talked about it verbally and seen me writing it down, it was a little bit easier for them to say, okay, fine, we're just simply taking what's on the board and putting on the book. But then I'd sort of coach them and say, well, think a little bit more about this and whatever the case may be. But it is quite tough. And now that I'm used to the group, I can also do the opposite, where I'll say, we have to do this writing first, and then you can run around. And I think as long as they trust me a little bit more comfortable with each other, but they know that it's going to be, we can wait and we can barter things. Like, you want to go crazy? Fine. First, let's complete what we're trying to complete, then we go crazy. Or we go crazy and they get tired, and like, now let's sit down and let's do some running and reflection. But still, a lot of people like, look, just want to answer and move on, and just, my job is like, well, think a little bit more. You know, can you come with one more? Try to come up with one more thing on that box.
I believe what you're talking about is kind of like the expectations. You know, it's kind of having, building expectations for the students that this is an integrated part of the experience, and that you, like you said, and that there'll be a balance. And so that does take time, like you said, the trust factor with the students.
Okay, so we're going to bring this part to a close. Thank you for your reflection and your sharing, and again, your openness to work with this and try it out in different ways. As for like sharing quickly amongst you guys, remember that the Teaching Artist Reps website does have a discussion board, so that is one way that you're able to communicate with one another. If you want, you know, this sharing an activity or an approach to one of these activities that really worked for you or that you're having a difficult time with. And then again, reaching out to Maida and Alex that we can maybe help you or put you in contact with the teaching artists that we've seen do it successfully. So, I'm going to pass over to...
So now I get to introduce the real person.